This video is going to be different than my typical video. Most of the time, I'm bringing you some kind of book review or a list of books that I think you need to read, or a hot tip on how I think you can improve your magic reading process. But recently, I've been reading the modern Stoic philosopher Ryan Holiday in his book, Ego is the Enemy. And one of the things that he points out in there is that too often we only share the best vision of ourselves. And I feel like we've fallen prey to that a little bit here with erudite magic. I'm certainly not a perfect person. For example, I don't even read all of my magic books. So in this episode, I thought that I would have a real heart-to-heart conversation with the true erudite magicians out there to talk about some of the books that I haven't read, but probably should. And along the way, I am going to share some things that are helping me that I hope will help you if you decide that you want to get through parts of your library as well. Now, obviously, this is not going to be a top 5 or a top 10 list because I don't actually know how to rank books that I haven't read. If you're a magic book fan, as I know you are, then you'll probably enjoy talking about some of these books and what I hope to learn from them, as well as the things that I'm going to deploy to help me get through them. With that intro out of the way, let's get started. And these are in no particular order. One of the sets of books that I really want to get through is the Complete Walton. I have all 3 of these books that I acquired sometime in the last year or two when they went on sale, and I just haven't cracked them open, but they're absolutely gorgeous with these different multicolored cloth bound with the silver embossing on it. And I've heard a lot about Roy Walton. And in fact, I have a close friend or two who have performed some material from Roy Walton that I thought was pretty good. If we're keeping this real, and we are, then one of the things that I think has kept me from reading these is when I got them, I flipped through and saw that there were very few pictures or illustrations to accompany the text, which made them appear dense, dry, and heavy. But you know what? Fall is the perfect season for me to get into some of those types of books. And if we know anything about reading through magic books, it's that going through something that's dry or slightly boring or off the beaten path, like a Roy Walton book, is a sure recipe to find something that no one else is performing. Till this point in my life, I would say some of the most dry reading has been Simon Aronson, but in fact, I love a lot of the tricks that he's come up with, even if I didn't always think that reading the books was fun. So I'm going to get into this one over the next year, maybe, or so, and let you know what I find. If you have tricks that you like from Roy Walton, this is a great opportunity to jump into the conversation down below and sound off with what you think would be worth studying. Now, this next one, I know there are more than one book that covers this person's life, and I've been interested in studying more about his work ever since I saw him on The World's Greatest Magic. So maybe 6 months ago or so, I picked up The Mysteries of My Life by Richard Kaufman and Rene Levand. If you're not aware who Rene was, he is an Argentinian magician who had a significant handicap, for most of us anyway, when it comes to performing magic. He had only one arm. But the cool part is he didn't let that stop him from creating and performing some beautiful magic. And in fact, he simply leaned into how that would form and shape his magic. And that's really one of the reasons that I want to read about this, is to read about the character and material development, that process that he went through to find things that worked for him, and to see, 1, how I can be inspired, and 2, how I might learn to make better material that fits me personally. One of the first tips that I have for you that is coming to me as I'm talking about these books that I want to study is that it's important to kind of make a list. It can be completely overwhelming when I look around my library to make a determination, oh yeah, I haven't read that, I haven't read that, I haven't read that, and to try to figure out what do I want to read. I've addressed this in other videos, but I think it's pretty helpful to either pull the book right off the shelf when you see it, or if that's not going to work for you, if you're trying to take more of that structured approach, to at least make a list of the things that you're interested in reading. And then very specifically to a book like this Rene Levand book, is to write down why you're interested in that particular tome, so you make sure that you grab out of it what you think you're interested in. This episode, as ever, is being brought to you by Don's Magic and Books. Don is my dealer of choice when I'm looking for a fix. Of course, I'm talking about magic books, and you know he's got all kinds of great stuff that's sure to give you that next high when you're looking for a fix. He has old and rare books that are out of print, and he has the latest and greatest thing that's just come off the presses. No matter what you're searching for, head over to his website to check out everything he has to offer. I'm going to drop a link down in the description below, and you can browse over there knowing that you're going to get fast and free shipping if you live in the United States and meet very minimum purchase thresholds. But perhaps more importantly, you also know you're going to be getting a fair price on on whatever Don has listed. I've seen some killer deals on his website, and most of them don't last very long. So be sure to check out his store early and often, and whether or not you get to reading it right away, enjoy that next addition to your magic library. On a far more commercial level, one of the problems with running a review channel is that you tend to get the books that everyone's talking about because you're thinking, well, you're going to read it and come out with a review and talk to people about it so that they know what to expect if they were to decide to pick that up themselves. But sometimes, and specifically in the case of this next book, you pick up the book a little bit late and it stops being the book that everyone's talking about, and your fire for reading it and talking about it dies along with that in some ways. I have a lot of John Bannon books and love so much of his work. Not everything's been a home run, but by and large, he's one of the best creators that I've ever read. I purchased Very Hush Hush, but as I mentioned earlier, I kind of missed out on the early version of it and bought it later. So it felt like I really missed out on everybody wanting to talk about it, and so I just haven't read it yet. I made other priorities and other projects came up, but it's rare that I regret reading a magic book, especially by John Bannon. And that's kind of another thing that I'm learning along the way, is that no matter what the book is, even if it's terrible, I rarely regret spending time reading what some other concerned magician has cared enough to research and type up and put into book format to try to teach me tricks. And I understand in this one, there's a very special trick right there at the very beginning, using cards to make a magic square, which I know has been done before, but everyone's talking about it, and so I just need to get down and start reading it because that sounds like something I would want to perform. And that's another pro tip for you, is that as you read through these books, keep that notebook, pen, and paper handy, because as you read tricks that you feel like you like or might suit your character, as we talked about previously, you want to jot it down so that you can kind of keep a running list of tricks that might fit you. Other than that initial trick with the magic square, what are some other John Bannon tricks from Very Hush Hush that you think everyone should know about? Sound off down in the comments below. So if John Bannon represents the extreme end of everyone knows this magician, everyone likes this magician, we know exactly what to expect from him, at the extreme opposite end of the spectrum is this next book that I want to read, which is My Way to Mentalism by Tony Benarelli. Tony has a couple of books on my shelf, and most of these books I picked up on extreme discounts from one source or another, but I've heard some really great stuff about his work, and not only that, because I'm a mentalist, I feel like it's always interesting to read something off the beaten path, something that might just give you a germ of an idea, and it's such a small book, I have a feeling it's going to be one of the books that I read sooner than many of the others on this list. I mentioned before having a list of the books that you want to read so that you can help prioritize, but I think another equally important facet of this is to have a plan, which is to know when I'm going to read some of these books. My plan for whatever book I end up reading first is to bring it with me into the rest of my house and not leave it down here just in my office and studio, keep it handy, and then pick it up in the evenings, because I already know that typically between end of work and before we have supper, I'll usually have 15 to 30 minutes there that's largely uninterrupted. And if I keep that book close by, it's going to be more likely that I'll pick it up and at least flip through it at the bare minimum, and maybe even start to read some of what it says and absorb it. You know, if you've been watching this channel, and especially the last few episodes with my 5-foot shelf of magic, then you know that I really like the Miracle Factory books because of how meaty and historic they are. They offer way more than just the tricks. They offer you some of the context around the performer, some of the biographical information, personal details that just make it jump off the page and make it way more interesting than just reading another card trick. Well, years ago, I acquired Roy Benson by Starlight by Levand and Todd Carr, and I know I flipped through it, but I really haven't spent any kind of time with this, even though I know that so many people think this is one of the best Miracle Factory books out there, and Roy Benson was such a clever magician. And with a book like this and the size of it, I know that it's not going to be something that I just plow through, and because it's so old, it's unlikely that I'm going to read it cover to cover for a full review. But the point here is that I think it's okay to give yourself some grace. Whether you've read the book or whether you've only read parts of a book, it doesn't really matter that much. Our goal in life is not to become encyclopedias of magic or to become some kind of savant who can just pull out of thin air everything we've ever read. So even if I were to read it cover to cover, I'm quite confident that I wouldn't retain everything I read. So why do I need to do that? Why not give myself permission to read the parts that I like, and whatever I don't get to, I don't get to. So with anything in this list or the list that you're creating, don't create this artificial pressure. Magic is a fun hobby. There's plenty of pressure in real life, in your job and in your family or other situations, plenty of things that you have to do. Magic shouldn't be something that you have to do. It should be something you enjoy doing. The next one that I got this book quite a while ago. I went through a couple of tricks and then for some reason life got in the way and I ended up not reading very far into it, but I really want to get further. In this case, I'm talking about Mr. Jennings Takes It Easy. We all know that Larry Jennings did some difficult sleight of hand, but it's not quite as well known about the stuff that he did was relatively easy. And Richard Kaufman put all of this into one giant book that I plan to make some time for, hopefully this fall and winter when outdoor activities become less of a thing and life slows down a bit. So just learning a simple card trick or two that hopefully I can take with me and share at a magic convention or with some friends. And because this is supposed to be easy, it's way less intimidating. Last but certainly not least in this is a book that I got before the fire broke out at Vanishing Ink because they had some of the only copies remaining. It was the Denny Haney Collected Wisdom. And if you follow me on any of my social media, you probably already saw that I got this. I thought about buying it when it originally came out, but missed out on that opportunity, and now I have it in my library, and I want to be inspired by not only Denny's magic, but also his thinking. This is the kind of book that I think is going to be a special treat because it seems to be relatively more rare, and because Denny himself was such a book lover. I feel like I'm developing a relationship. Even though he's dead and gone, there's a bond there because we share so much in common. The whole point of this video is to show you I'm not a perfect person. I have plenty of books that I haven't read, but you're not going to find me losing any sleep over it. The one thing that I'm doing with this video, though, is I'm putting in place a tool that can help some of you, which is accountability. I'm not trying to put pressure on myself, but I know that if I at least state out loud what my goal is and tell someone else, and in this case, I'm telling all of you as erudite magicians, then I'm more likely to do something about it since I've acknowledged the perceived issue. I've heard from so many of you that say you have a book problem, and I understand that sentiment, but if you want to make some progress on that book problem and feel a little less guilty about the books that you have on your shelf that you haven't read, then join me. Post down below with a few of the books that you want to get to next. Use this as your priority list and your accountability. And oh, by the way, feel free to ask me next time you see me which one of these books I've been reading and how I'm liking it. Hopefully that'll start a really great conversation between us about the magic books that we know and love. As always, my friends, I really appreciate you watching, and until next time, keep reading.